Tears filled their eyes. The sobs echoed through the pews of a church that had once been warmed by the sermons of a man they so deeply respected. The name Hilarion Heagy, once whispered with admiration, was now shrouded in sorrow and loss. The kind-hearted pastor, the patient spiritual guide, had made a choice that stunned his entire community. He had turned away from Christ. He had chosen Islam. The moment that changed everything happened on February 22nd, 2023, when Hilarion Heagy officially recited the shahada and became a Muslim. The world watched in astonishment. Among Christians, his decision was like a bolt of lightning in broad daylight, splitting their hearts with pain and confusion. They wondered, why did he leave us? Why did he abandon the faith that had elevated him to a place of honor? But for Heagy, now known as Said Abdul Latif, his decision was a long journey toward a truth that had burned within him for over 20 years. "The fire of Islam has kindled my soul," he said, his voice shaking the hearts of those who heard him. "I tried to close my eyes, tried to ignore it, but the flame never died. I realized it wasn't a fire of destruction, but a guiding light." It all began at a small Islamic center, hidden in the Rust Belt of Appalachia. At the time, he was merely a spiritual wanderer, full of questions and doubt. But there, he found something he had never experienced before, a peace that seeped into the deepest recesses of his soul. From that moment, the call of Islam resonated in his heart, even as he continued walking a different path. When he finally declared his intention to convert in October 2022, a storm began to gather around his life. Those closest to him tried to persuade him to return, but Heagy knew there was no turning back. Every time he looked within, he found a growing longing to prostrate before the one God, uniting in love with the Creator, humanity, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. "Islam is my home," he said, his eyes filled with conviction. "I feel like a child who had been lost for so long, and I have finally come home. It feels peaceful, like feeling the warmth of an embrace after years of cold." The welcome from the Muslim community was heartwarming. He, once a leader, now stood among them as a brother, greeted with smiles and open arms. Their hospitality, their warmth, "I've never felt anything like it before," he said softly. "They accepted me unconditionally. Their love is a reflection of true Islam." Heagy had once been a Byzantine Catholic priest at the Holy Resurrection Monastery in Wisconsin, revered for his wisdom and praised for his patience. But the life he left behind is now a shadow of the past. He had dreamed of building an Eastern Christian monastery in California, a grand vision he now released with a light heart. For him, his spiritual journey had reached its true destination. After declaring his faith in Islam, his phone never stopped ringing. Messages poured in from around the world, some filled with curiosity, others with anger. "Why did you leave Christ?" was the question that relentlessly followed him. Yet with his characteristic gentleness, Said Abdul Latif responded, "I never abandoned my love for God. I simply found it more deeply and truly in Islam." Now, his old name is swept away like dust from a road. Said Abdul Latif has found his true home, where his heart is no longer restless and his soul no longer lost. The world may mourn his departure, but he knows this journey was the destiny that had long awaited him. And finally, he is home. Hilarion Heagy's journey to Islam is a story of the courage to follow the heart's calling, even if it means leaving behind everything he once knew and loved. Amid the tears of those who grieve and the astonishment of a watching world, this tale reminds us that the search for true truth knows no bounds, and faith is a deeply personal journey filled with mystery. As Said Abdul Latif, he has found the peace he had long sought. Peace in surrendering to Allah, eternal love for the Creator, and unshakable tranquility in Islam. His story will continue to inspire those who dare to walk toward the light, even on lonely and quiet roads. In the end, coming home is not about a place, It is about finding a home within the faith that ignites the soul. The journey toward the light of truth often begins with a deep search for the meaning of life, an unquenchable curiosity, and a thirst for answers to soul-stirring questions. This is the story of Professor James D. Frankel, a prominent scholar in the field of comparative religion at the University of Hawaii. Born into a secular Jewish family in New York in 1969, he spent his early years far from spiritual beliefs. However, a winding path of life led James to encounter Islam, a religion he had initially observed only from afar through the Quran given by a friend. From a young age, James was raised in a secular Jewish family. At the age of 13, he chose to become a communist after reading Karl Marx's works. James had a friend from Pakistan named Mansour. This friend gave him a Quran and asked him to read it. Perhaps this was James's first encounter with a Muslim. "I don't want you to go to hell," James recalled Mansour saying. At that time, James did not believe in hell. However, out of respect for Mansour, he took the Quran and placed it on a bookshelf at home. Years later, while studying in Washington, James began to abandon his communist views and question the meaning of life that had haunted him since childhood. He often pondered, why are humans born? Where do we go after death? Why do people suffer? One day he received news that his grandmother had passed away. Deeply saddened, he flew to New York to attend the funeral. It was then that James had the opportunity to ask a rabbi about the meaning of life, but he received no satisfying answer. James began searching for God and the answers to all the questions that had long plagued him. He returned to New York before the new semester started. One day, while walking in Times Square, very different from today, he noted, "Back then, you could find many preachers from various religious sects." James enjoyed engaging in conversations with one of them about religion, albeit with skepticism. He once observed a group of black men in robes praying. He approached them to ask about their ritual. One of them told James he could not join because he was a devil. According to the preacher, all white people were devils. James argued, "If I'm truly a devil, why do I keep searching for God?" Back home, James remembered the Quran Mansour had given him 6 years earlier. He immediately opened and began reading it. He found no verses declaring him or other white people as devils. He read on until he fell asleep and continued reading the next morning. The Quran provided answers to all the questions that had haunted him since childhood. It explained clearly about the creator of the universe. James felt as if the author of the book was speaking directly to him. "I've never experienced anything like this. I unconsciously cried while reading. At times, my hair stood on end. It truly felt like I was reading God's words," James reflected. In January 1990, James attended a high school reunion where friends gathered and shared life stories. When a friend asked about his beliefs, James replied that he now believed in God. His friends, knowing him as a communist, were surprised. One of them asked which God he believed in. James explained there is only one God. He shared what he had learned from the Quran, that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Upon hearing this, Mansour immediately declared that James had become a Muslim. James initially laughed, thinking that only Mansour was a Muslim, while he merely believed in one God. Mansour explained that acknowledging Allah as the only deity and Muhammad as his messenger meant he was indeed a Muslim. James was astonished. For the first 6 to 8 months of his new life as a Muslim, he practiced Islam guided solely by the Quran and books provided by Mansour. Professor James D. Frankel's journey to Islam proves that guidance can come from unexpected directions to anyone sincerely seeking truth. From someone distant from religion and once embracing communism, James found peace and answers to his lifelong questions in the divine words of the Quran. His spiritual transformation shows that true faith arises from genuine search, deep thought, and an open heart. James's story inspires us with the understanding that Hidayah, divine guidance, is a gift from Allah, transcending race, color, and background. His life reminds us that those who sincerely seek God will be guided to a straight path. May this story enrich our faith, deepen our gratitude, and motivate us to continue studying Islam with sincerity and devotion.